chances of there being some kind of energy or spirit left. Tonight we're going to talk about ley lines. We're going to talk about undercurrents running under the town. But what's really important to know and understand is how old is the town that we're about to walk through. So I'm now going to ask you, how old is that town behind us, Berry?
1525.
1525, very specific. 400, 1500, year 1500 or 1500 years? 16. Okay, we're not going to do this all night. The name Bury, the word Bury, features all over England. You'll have seen it before: Shewsbury, Shaftesbury, Bury St Edmunds, and the original Bury. It's actually an old Germanic name, a word that describes a walled town that had a fort in the middle. And anywhere you see that around the country, there will have been a walled town with a fort in the middle. Now, the man that coined that phrase was Alfred the Great, and it was coined as a kind of defense mechanism against the Vikings, those brutal bearded warriors that parked up and raided, could only be beaten by towns where you could hide behind a wall. Which means, given that Alfred the Great lived in 919, Bury is over 1,100 years old, officially. But there is something that makes me think Bury is even older than that. And the clue lies 7.5 miles in that direction. What am I talking about?
Manchester.
And Manchester is what? Be careful now. Roman. How do we know that? Chester in it. Easy, easy. Interestingly. Do we know why Manchester's called Manchester? It is. You've been on one of these before.
The football team.
There are 3 rivers that run through Manchester. Well, 4, but there were 3. Does anyone know the names?
Oh, yeah.
Irwell, Medlock, Does anyone know the 4th one?
Where is it?
It's gone now. No one doesn't go through Manchester. The 4th one is now underground, and it runs under a street, and that street is Tib Street, and the river underneath is called the River Tib. Still there, you just can't see it. And that road itself, river itself, was named by the Romans. It was named after the River Tibor that runs through the centre of Rome to make the Romans feel less homesick. But yes, to your point, the 3 rivers that run through Manchester, either side of 2 massive hills. And the Romans arrived and went, they look like massive hills. So we'll call it Mamucia, which was the Roman for Brest Hills, that became the city of Brest. But that's not what we're here to talk about. Why do we think the Romans came to Bury? Because they left something here that made Bury world famous. Black pudding! Black pudding! The Romans brought black pudding, and they made a recipe and it stuck. Now, we don't know why they chose Bury, but we know they did. So for 2,000 years, people have lived in that town behind us. There have been Neolithic remains found in the banks of the Irwell and at the foot of Walmsley Road, which means cavemen, real cavemen, not the ones we may encounter on Silver Street at the wrong time of day. Actual functioning cavemen lived and died. So we're talking 10,000 years maybe of people living in that small square of land we're about to walk through. Now, if that doesn't scare you, it should. When we finish our walk tonight, we're going to be at the epicentre of where 2 ley lines cross, where the energy is meant to be at its highest, where people have reported pushes, pulls, scratches, tugs, taps. I'll tell you when we get there. Until we get there, feel free to ask questions, take photographs. I will be telling you stories as we go. To kick us off and get us in the mood, we need to tell you a story, not from Bury per se, but from a township not far away from Bury. Who's heard of Unsworth? Good. Who's heard of the Dragon of Unsworth? Ooh, you. How well do you know the story? So, the Dragon of Unsworth is a story about 400 years old. There are those that believe that the Dragon of Unsworth story influenced the story of St. George and the Dragon. But it goes like this. 450 years ago, this huge Roman road that we stand on now would have been a lovely place during the day, full of trees, meadows, and sunshine at certain times of the year. But at night, it was a very, very different place altogether. And the people of Unsworth often reported hearing shrieks coming from the woods that ran all the way down to the pole where Unsworth actually stands. They heard animals mewing and crying out in pain. And during the morning hours, they would find farm animals butchered, burned, half-eaten. And when the farm animals began to run thin, it was the people that went missing, the children to begin with, and then the elderly, until all that was left in Unsworth was the fit young workers, the field workers, the people that the beast hadn't managed to savage. And so they held a Witan, which was an old type of meeting. And they decided that the strongest and best armed should go after the Dragon of Unsworth. And the first to try this was a farmer. He was a former soldier. He had castle forged shield plate, shield, and a sword. And he went into the woods the following day, Chatterton Woods. He took with him nothing more than the sword and his shield and the sheep. And he tied the sheep to a tree, and he used it as bait, and he waited, and he waited, and in the dawn, the dragon came, and it landed right opposite the sheep. Described as thus, a huge winged beast with a barrel chest, a neck that coiled like a snake, and a mouth that had far too many teeth on the side of its jaw. Its eyes were yellow, its nostrils puffed out smoke, and it squatted down and looked at the sheep, bared its teeth. It was about to eat it. When the farmer decided he was going to charge, he drew his sword and he charged the sheep. The dragon and the sheep. The dragon heard the cry. He could not hear that cry. It swooped up, it went around him and realised that it was about to be beaten by castle forged steel. They were clever dragons. So it circled him round and round again. And this sort of middle-aged, gout-ridden farmer kept charging and waving his sword around and huffing and puffing in his face until he ran out of oxygen and he dropped down and he tried to get his breath back. And at that point the dragon landed, opened its mouth and burned his body inside his cage and ate his meat and left his bones for the crows. And as a joke, it let the sheep live. So the following day, the people of Unsworth decided that they would have to try different tactics, and they sent into the woods a merchant. And the merchant was rich. He was very, very well off, and he had the best technology that money could buy. He had an arquebus. Is the right question? No one's ever heard of an arquebus. An arquebus was an old gun. It was the very first type of gun ever. It was the size of 3 guns together. And it sat on a fork like this, and you had to load one end and then run down the other end, and pick it up, and pull the frying pan, and close the frying pan, and light the prison, and bang, you fired a bullet. And it took 30 minutes in the good weather, but it was the cutting-edge technology. So the merchant went into the fields of Chatterton with his gun, and he set them up, and he sat and waited. Sure enough, the following day, the dragon appeared again. It was about to eat the sheep, and the merchant fired the gun. Bang! Bullet fired out. It hit the dragon right there on the neck, right in the neck. And it bounced off helplessly because old bullets were proper rubbish. They were made of soft lead, mostly rubbish metal. The gunpowder was poor quality and it was not even effective enough to be a firework. So he loaded it again and fired it again. Bang! Bang! Every 30 minutes. Bang! And the dragon just sat forward watching until it decided it had enough. It swooped up, burned his body, ate his corpse, you know the rest. Now the merchant had got into the wood with a poacher who helped him track the dragon. And the merchant took the gun and crept back to the village and told the people what had happened. And now they had a problem. Sword and shield would not kill the dragon. The gun, because they could not get close enough, the gun could get close enough but was not effective. How were they going to kill the Dragon of Unsworth? Up steps Thomas of Unsworth. Anyone heard that name? Thomas of Unsworth. He's the hero of this story. Thomas happened to be the son of the poacher. And he decided that he had a great idea. So the following day he went back into the woods with his father and he took the gun. He set the gun up, the arquebus, and they waited. And the dragon arrived. I'll eat my sheep, thought the dragon. Thomas pulled the trigger. Bang! The bullet hits the dragon, bounces off, rubbish bullet. The dragon turns round and watches. And this is where Thomas puts his plan into play. he feigns running out of ammunition. I've run out of ammunition! The dragon takes bait, swoops up, hovers around Thomas, gets really close, opens his mouth, and at that point, Thomas stepped down, pulled the blade from inside the hunting knife inside his boots, dropped it handle first into the gun, tap loaded it, aimed it, bang! Fired the blade into the dragon's neck. Poor quality shot, straight through his jugular, rips the dragon's throat in half. It's writhing around almost like a two-headed dragon, flailing around from side to side, blood spurting, all kinds of flesh hanging off. It dragged itself into its cave, and the whole forest went quiet. 2 questions. Did the dragon die? Well, the encounter with Thomas of Unsworth is reported to be the last time the dragon was ever seen. So yeah, probably did. The second question, where did the dragon die? No one's completely sure, but they believe that when the dragon died, the people of Unsworth built, on top of its death spot, a tavern, which over time became an inn, which over time became a pub. And to this day, it will know it as the Dragon of Unsworth, the pub. It was not just a nickname, that was where the dragon was originally meant to have been killed, slayed by Thomas of Unsworth, and its body dragged away into the woods just behind. I would say go visit it, but you'll find it's nothing more than a co-op now. Kind of ruins the atmosphere. Right, let's go, follow me. Florian Berry, or as I like to call it, the new bit. Now I'm here to talk, not about this part, we'll get to that, we will get to that. I'm here to talk about the second oldest building in the town of Bury, which can just be seen over the course of the bridge there, silhouetted nicely against the dusk. Talking, of course, about Bury Grammar School. Now, I say it's the second oldest building in Bury. The original one is the second oldest. Does anybody want to hazard a guess at what year it was built?
1900.
1900 is incorrect.
1650.
1650 is incorrect. Last one?
1810.
1830. Both are incorrect.
1525.
1525 is spookily close to a number I'm going to get to in a minute. The school that you're looking at now is the girls' school, but it was the boys' school before it was made into the girls' school. It was made into the girls' school in 1888. Before that, when it was first built, it was built in the year 1570. For context, Queen Elizabeth I was on the throne at the time that was built. There are only 3 other schools in the Greater Manchester area that are older. Manchester Grammar, Stockport and Bolton Grammar Schools. Other than that, you're looking at the oldest school in Greater Manchester. Now with that history, amongst many other things, comes a very dark, sinister story. And for some reason, someone's been shouting the year 1525 out. I want you to not remember the year 1525, but 1625. Because that is the year of a great snow and winter storm that took place in Bury. The snow was so thick and the ice was so strong that handcarts and horses were just left on the old Bury Bridge to freeze. People were stuck in their houses, people were stuck in their places of work. In that building there, 4 boys got stuck that should have gone home to Ramsbottom but couldn't make it due to the weather. And so, they stayed in the library. Now they sat by the fire, and boys being boys, they started playing games. The first game they played was a war game. They turned the tables over and threw things at each other. When they ran out of things to throw, they played a game called Who Can Throw the Heaviest Book. And the winner of this competition was one Henry White, who threw a book the size of a tombstone at his friend. He missed, knocked a candle over, which went skimming ominously into the darkness. Now when they retrieved the candle and the book, they realised it was a copy of none other than the Grand Grimoire. Who knows what that is? Because I didn't get it. Ooh. Close. The Grand Grimoire is the original book on the occult, but very specifically, the Grand Grimoire is the original text on how to summon the devil. And we believe this story even more to be true because in the early 1500s, that book was found and recorded in a library in Prestwich. It's not beyond the wit of man to assume it had ended up at Bury Grammar School after all. Now the boys, well versed in Latin through all their lessons, now embarked on their third most stupid idea of the night. They decided to follow the instructions laid out in the Grand Grimoire. So they sent one of the lads to the kitchens, and he came back with salt and sticks and bread and string. And in front of the fire, one of them said the words as the others made the shapes, all laid out in the Grand Grimoire. And they said the words, and then they said the words again, and then they said the incantation backwards. And so it goes that a bolt of lightning hit the school right at the time that those words were said, in the middle of a snowstorm, freakish, unlucky. The flames went red, white, translucent, back to red, blue, and red again. And in the face of the flames, it stood the devil. The devil grinned at the boys, and they screamed, terrified. Nowhere in the Grand Grimoire did it explain how to unsummon the devil. And so they poured out of the library and headed for the stairs. Running up the stairs was Mr. Hodgkinson. Mr. Hodgkinson was the deputy head teacher at the time, and was recorded and noted as being something of a Dumbledore of the medieval ages. He was a necromancer. He dabbled in all the arts, and he knew something was wrong. He was already on his way up to the study. And as he burst into the library door slammed shut behind him. The devil looked at Mr. Hodgkinson and said, "You know how this ends, old man. Battle of wits. If you beat me, I'll return to hell. If I beat you, you're coming with me." So Mr. Hodgkinson thought long and hard. He gave the devil his first challenge. "I challenge thee, devil," he said, "to count every blade of grass on the playing fields outside the school." The devil laughed. Transformed into a bat, he flew through the chimney and out into the fields that would have stretched all the way down to Crostons, all the way out to Elton, right down to the ground we're standing on now. Past the old church. You used to stand opposite, right there. The devil counted every blade of grass back down the chimney, and not a second of mortal time had passed. It was like nothing had happened to Mr. Hodgkinson, and the devil gave the old man the number. "For your second challenge," said Mr. Hodgkinson, "I challenge thee, devil, to count every grain of sand in the banks of the Irwell." For in those days the Irwell had banks and not shopping trolleys in it. So the devil transformed into a bat, flew through the chimney and out into the countryside. He followed the Irwell all the way to his source up at the Bacup, turned and came back down, all the way into Manchester, not to be tricked at stopping at Bury. He came all the way back, counting every grain of sand as he went. And again, when he returned to the fireplace, not 1 second of mortal time passed, and he gave the old man the number. And now he was down to just one life. But there are those that read this story and think that Mr. Hodgkinson did this on purpose. He made his first two challenges so ridiculously easy that the devil would fall for the final one. "I challenge thee, devil," he said, "to count the letters in any book that I name in the town of Bury." "Name the book," said the devil. "I name the Bible in St. Mary's Parish Church, Silver Street," said the old man. The devil laughed, thinking he understood the root of this trick. He turned himself into a bat, flew all the way down Silver Street, right to the church where we're headed shortly. He took his human form and walked through the front doors of the church. He went up the aisle, up to the lectern, opened the vellum, and there in front of him was the Bible. "Fool," thought the devil. "He thinks that I cannot enter a church. I'm a fallen angel. Of course I can enter a church." And he looked down at the Bible to begin his count and realized that it was he who had been tricked. He could not put two letters together. Every word on the page of the Bible swam in front of him as if he'd had 14 pints in the two tubs before he went in. Because it was the devil who hadn't realized he couldn't read the Holy Scriptures. They were as alien to him as, well, you fill in the blanks. And in a rage, the old man, the devil, turned back into a bat, screamed down Silver Street, threw himself down the chimney into the fireplace in the hall, and he cast himself to hell with such anger and such fury that he cracked the stone above the fireplace. Now, why did I tell you that last bit? They carved the year into the stone to mark it. And the year was what? 1625.
I'm listening.
And the stone sat above the fireplace until the 1880s, when it was demolished and rebuilt to the building it is now. And as a mark of respect And out of fear that the devil may return, the architects and builders moved that stone from the fireplace and they put it in that clock tower there, where it remains to this day, the Devil's Stone, cracked by the Satan himself. If you're having problems finding the stone, go on the school's website. There's a handy page there that explains exactly where to find it, because it's all true. Let's go this late 16, 17, 18-year-old, and she was suited by an admirer who worked in the abattoir, and now you know where the abattoir was. The only problem was this man was a lot older, and he was dirty and unkempt and rough, and he swore a lot, and he spoke very little, and he dressed all appallingly, and every time he finished his shift at the abattoir, he refused to clean his boots. So he would often leave red footprints around the town of Bury, earning him the nickname Blood Boots. Now, this girl did not like Blood Boots. She did not want to become Mrs. Blood Boots in any shape or form. But he would not take no for an answer, and he simply silently followed her everywhere she went. She lived in one of these houses. He would stand outside her house. When she went to work in the taverns, he went and watched her. When she came to bathe, he would stand at the big glass window and watch her. And he would never leave her alone. Now one day, in winter, he's standing outside there watching through the window. And she's on her own bathing late at night. All the attendants to the left were attending to private clients who came later in the day to avoid the masses. The girl's bathing on her own. The wind and the rain start getting harsh, so Blood Boots steps inside. He sees the girl in the pool and he stands in the corner, hidden by the shadows. But at some point she sees him watching. She yelps in surprise and tries to climb out of the pool. As she does, Blood Boots decides to go and meet her at the ladders. And he walks around the side of the pool. As she gets towards him, she realizes what's happening and turns to go to the other side. Now bear in mind what I told you about the base of this swimming pool. It's clay, it's sand, the water's fairly deep, it's designed for all manner of sizes. And she's a small girl, only 16, 17 years old, and she's struggling to keep her feet on the floor. And as she gets halfway round, he goes round the other side, watching. And as she gets to the other side, the girl sees what's happening and goes back again. And so this goes on, with Blood Boots walking around the pool, and the girl struggling to keep her footing and to escape his direction. And before long, she starts going under the water, coming back up, and going under, and coming back up less frequently. And the more this happens, the more water she takes in. And the more this happens, the more her feet stick in the clay. And before long, she's struggling to get her head above water. And before even longer, she's on the bottom of the pool with air bubbles leaving her lungs. Now, Blood Boots thinks this is a ruse to get him to go away, so he stands and watches, helpful, until he realizes that it's not a ruse. He jumps in, pulls her out. It's too late, she's gone. Taken by grief, and even he didn't realize he had, he goes and stands in the gents' changing rooms at the far end of the swimming pool, takes off his belt, hangs himself. 2 deaths. The following night, and then the preceding 50 years, literally 50 years, the women of the baths reported a very, very similar phenomena, always at night, always when there are a few people around. The girls would put their heads under the water to wash their hair. They would hear the sound of someone screaming as if through water. Many women reported having their hair pulled when their heads were under water. Many women got home and found scratches and bruises on their arms as if something was trying to get their attention. The staff that worked in this part here would frequently hear screams for help coming as if someone was being drowned in the pool. They would walk in and the water would be so still that it was reflecting the candles above as if it were a mirror. And this went on and on until the 1900s, 1901 to be precise, when they trained the pool to tile it and build a Russian vapor bath. Does anyone know what a Russian vapor bath is? It's a sauna. Bury's first sauna was built right over there by the railings in 1901. And as part of this work, they drained the pool and they found a locket entrenched in the clay at the bottom. Long story short, the locket had the initials of a girl on. It was reconciled to her grave. We will walk past the grave later on today. And overnight, the haunting literally went away. But a new haunting began. The first people that used the new Russian vapor bath, or sauna, as we would call it, all reported that they were locked in the door just not open. Well, that's just the door swelling on a new sauna, because there's no locks on the sauna. So then Jimmy threw her crowbars and took the door off, sanded it down, put it back on, and every day the door would stick. And every time someone was stuck in that sauna, they reported the same phenomenon. a man with a big, thick beard, heavy set, with bags under his eyes and a horrible long black coat and boots with a red tinge on the bottom, would be sat in the corner of the men's changing rooms, staring at them malevolently while they scratched at the door waiting for it to be opened. This went on and off. No one understood why this apparition appeared and why it targeted certain men, because not everyone saw this. But right up until 1972, this was recorded as happening. Until they closed this place down altogether and built Castle Leisure Centre across the way. And so the story goes that the foreman of the close it down on the last day walked outside, locked the door, took one look down the street and said, "Who's walked red paint down there?" The question is, did Blood Boots find peace somewhere else? Or did he simply find a shortcut to Castle Leisure Centre? Many travellers from east to west and west to east have stopped at this part of town. The pubs, the Clarence, the White Lion, what is now Wilds, used to have different names over the years. There's a Hare and Hounds there at one point. They hosted many, many travellers. And over the years, many levels of boggart activity were recorded. You remember me talking about boggarts. The Clarence is a great place to experience that. No jokes, no jokes. There were many people that insisted over the years they'd seen beer glasses raised, hovering over tables before they flew into walls and smashed. Grown men claimed to have the chairs ragged from underneath them so that they would fall over. This was malevolent boggart activity at some of its most brutal. But none so as the activity that was recorded in the White Lion. Now the White Lion is only 2 or 3 buildings to the left. For obvious reasons, I'm telling you this story down a dark alley. It's a bit better than the main street with the buses. A travelling salesman from Liverpool was headed to Hull, and he stopped in Bury for 3 days. He had business in Manchester and the surrounding areas. He came down this lane and he stopped in the White Lion. He was offered the room on the roof, underneath the attic, the thatched roof. It's now not thatched, but the roof is original in terms of its timber. He was put into the room for his first night and he fell asleep after a long day's travel. He was awoken by a banging noise. And I'm not talking about bang, 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 ooh, someone's there. Bang, bang, bang! That kind of bang. The kind of bang that wakes you up with your heart pumping and the sweat already forming on your skin, your hairs on the back of your neck on end. He woke up almost swearing and calling out Hail Marys. It was that scary. His heart was racing and it took him a few moments to settle down and go back to sleep. But sure enough, he did fall back to sleep. And sure enough, after a few moments, bang, bang, bang! So the walls were shaking. He woke up and looked at the roof and he could hear on the roof something scurrying around, something with claws climbing its way in the thatch. He looked at it for a few moments and then eventually he fell back to sleep. He was woken up again. I'm not going to do it again. But the following morning he went down to speak to the landlord. "Whoever's in the room next to me needs to keep it down," he said. "I can't sleep." You know what the landlord said. "There is nobody in the room next door to you, sir." The second night he went to sleep. And he wasn't woken up by a banging this time. He was woken up by the sound of a woman crying, a soft, gentle sobbing coming from the corner of the room. And when he woke, there was a man with a lantern. A long coat, like a trench coat, and a lantern. And he was simply standing in the corner of his room with the lantern held up against the rafter, staring as if there should have been a window there, but there was nothing. The man in the bed let out a gasp, and as he did, the man with the lantern twisted, slowly, looked him directly in the eye, and he said, "If you can see what I can see, you'd end it all now." Terrified to his core, the man ran down the stairs into the street and was found wandering around the wild at 4 a.m, crying for his mother. He was found by the landlord, comforted, brought back in, reassured, given drink, money off his bill. He was given a new room, he was given a crucifix and begged, "Do not say bad words about the White Lion. Please stay your final night and say good words instead." He was given another room. He went to sleep that night and he didn't wake up. So the landlord went and knocked on the door, and when he opened the door, he found him hanging from the rafters with the crucifix nailed the wrong way up above the bed. And that was the final nail in this story's coffin. They had to bring in the church. Now, Bury doesn't have a bishop, so they brought in the bishops of Manchester and the bishops of Bolton, and they were embarked on a 7-day exorcism of the White Lion. They fought the demon from the very rafters down through the rooms to the basement and back up again. And every time they beat the demon from a room, it came back into another room. And if you don't believe this story, because I didn't believe it when first I was told it, read about it in the book in Bury. T.J. Barton's book of Bury stories. It's all detailed in there. It took them 7 days to beat the demon. And in the end, they cast it into the cellar. They got it in chains. And they, with a final incantation, they cursed it out of the building. Now, the people of Bury were all lined up on the streets because news of this had spread. And at the point that this beast made it out, so the story goes that it transformed into a white rabbit. And it hopped down the road to the end, to the wild, and off into the woods. Because the wild used to be literally wild. It used to be grassland and moorland, and there were trees and bushes. And so the story went that if you saw the white rabbit at the top of the nook, you did not approach the white rabbit, because it's not a white rabbit. It's an exorcised demon. We're now at Bury Castle. Yes, Bury has a castle. Castle was built in the 1100s. For many, many years, people of Bury didn't realise they had a castle. I'll give you a very brief potted history of this. That castle there was only discovered by accident in 1868 because they needed to dig some sewage pipes to come out of the town. When they dug the sewage pipes, they found out, someone said, "Hey, mate, looks like you've got a castle." We've got an architect, and he went, "Yep, that was a big one." Kind of best not touch it, and so they left it. How did it end up like that? You've got to go back to the Battle of Bosworth. The Battle of Bosworth, it was King Richard III against Henry Tudor. And the Pilkington family that owned Bury, they backed the wrong king. They lost that war. They didn't get beheaded. But Henry Tudor did take Bury off the Pilkingtons, and he gave it to the Derby family, who confusingly live in Liverpool. The final part of our war. I told you we were going to get to the point where the ley lines are at their closest. We are here. I told you I was going to take you on a walk where people feel, such as hair pulls, nips. Some people report bruises, sometimes hours or days after they've been on a walk around here. Let me rest assured, give you the reassurance, I don't work with anybody. There are no extras. I work alone. So if you hear something, if you feel something, you've been blessed. Okay, one more story. All that's left to do is say, stay close, look after each other, enjoy yourself, and I will see you on the other side.